The second weekend of Mariners baseball is in the books, and we've got a lot to talk about. We're going to answer some of your questions coming up here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, April 8th, 2024. This is Tidy Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast, which is brought to you by PrizePicks. It's the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnMLB and use the promo code LockedOnMLB. It's all lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. Thank you so much for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. All right, let's get into your questions. And by the way, folks, we are recording this on Sunday night and dropping this here early on Monday because I'm going to the ballpark tonight to see the boys play the Blue Jays. Let's answer this question here from Peter. How long of a leash do you give Hancock as a starter, regardless of level, before moving him to the bullpen if his stuff keeps falling off after an inning or two? So, Colby, we just talked about this on our Patreon show, which we actually dropped tonight or last night for you guys watching right now. And you have a plan in mind for Emerson Hancock following his disastrous start in that series finale against the Brewers. So go ahead and share that with us.
Yeah, to answer the question pretty directly, the time is now. Emerson Hancock is not a starting pitcher. It's very clear. We've seen very little in the minors to suggest that he's a major league quality starting pitcher. We've seen very little in the majors to suggest that he's anything more than, a number 4, number 5, number 6 type of guy at best. That is his ceiling. That is not that valuable. That is not that hard to replace. So the time is now. There were some interesting things that Hancock did on Sunday. We saw the fastball velo. He touched 95. He was a lot of 94s as well. That was good to see. We also saw him spin the fastball more than he ever has before. That's an interesting development. Something to keep an eye on. We saw him get some outs with the fastball, on the top rail. Got some whiffs on that pitch. He actually got quite a few whiffs on his four-seam fastball, which is, again, not typical for Hancock. It's a 40 grade fastball. It really is. And tonight last night it was, 50 at times. Other times it was a 40, but we did see some good things there. We actually saw a couple of decent sliders from Hancock too. Threw a couple for strikes, got some whiffs on him. The slider was actually pretty decent. So tonight or last night, whatever, you guys know what we're talking about. He didn't have his two-seamer, didn't have any command or control for that. Couldn't find the changeup at all. It was just a useless pitch for him. He is not a 4-pitch, 60 control, 55 command, number 4 starter. That's not who he is. It's very clear at this point. That's not who he is. Maybe that's who he could have been, but the injuries are real. Whether they're fair or not, they happened. And so Hancock, he's done. He is not a starting pitcher at this level. We've seen almost no growth whatsoever in his stuff. The command remains fine, but again, bad stuff with average command. That's a AAA arm. That is a back and forth arm. So I think the thing you have to consider here is you have to consider, the difference between Hancock and what we can get from Jonathan Diaz, from Dallas Keuchel, from, Levi Stout, or from Austin Voth is not that different right now. Is that a good thing? No, obviously not. You want a better number 5 starter than any of those guys, but
I think the other thing we should mention real quick is the Mariners specifically don't really have the time to wait it out and figure out if he can eventually start.
Right. They are in their contention window right now. So to me, you have to do what you can to get value from Emerson Hancock. He has none on the trade market. None. Zip, zilch. He's worthless. So what can you do? If he's not going to start, you can't trade him for anything of value. He's on your 40-man. you have to put him into the bullpen. You have to see what he can do. See if you could speed up the delivery. Maybe get him to sit 95 instead of touching 95. Maybe the slider sharpens up a little bit in shorter stints. Maybe the changeup. He can find a way to really just focus on 2 pitches at work because he doesn't have to get through the order 2 times. He only has to face 3 or 4 guys. And there's a possibility you can turn him into a multi-inning, mid-leverage, middle relief type like Chris Davinsky for the Astros a few years ago, like Colin McHugh, because there's just not a future in the rotation. He does not have the stuff or the command or control to get through a lineup 2 or 3 times. It's just not there. So to me, you have to start right away. You have to cut your loss. Look, this guy's not going to help us this year as a starter. It's very clear he's a mediocre pitcher at this point. We need to put him down in AAA while he has options left. We need to get him accustomed to shorter outings. We need to speed up his delivery. We need to carve out a potential career for this guy, an arm that could potentially help us down the line, because right now he is not. He is not. Again, if you're not better than Jonathan Diaz, you have no future in the organization you're currently in. You are replaceable, and that is what Hancock has become. So to me, the time is now. Put him in the bullpen, start making some changes to his delivery, speed him up a little bit, really start focusing on picking one of those 2 off-speed pitches to really hammer home, and you leave him in the minors for, 3-4 months. He's got to earn his way back in this multi-inning role, because it's basically the role that Austin Voth has right now, and Voth is just better. He is just better than Emerson Hancock. So I think that time is now. I think every start you give him, not only are you hurting your big league team, you're hurting the chances that Emerson Hancock turns into anything for you whatsoever. So the time is now. Send him down. You don't need a number 5 starter this week. You have the day off on Thursday. You can actually skip the number 5 spot in the rotation and keep everybody on normal rest this week. So I think you send him down tomorrow. You get him in the bullpen, and then when you need that number 5 starter spot, you add Diaz to the 40-man, or you start with both and you kind of piggyback both. So I think the time is now. I think you have to make that switch now, because I don't think you can give him another start and look at your clubhouse in good faith and be like, we're trying to win, and Emerson Hancock's a starting pitcher. He's just shown he's not that guy. He's not that guy. He's not a guy who deserves multiple opportunities to fail. There's just nothing in the profile that suggests he's anything other than maybe a middle relief type. And the only way you're going to find out if he is a middle relief type is to put him in that role in the minors and see what happens.
So a follow-up question to that, Joey wants to know, would Dallas Keuchel be better than Hancock until Wu is ready?
Probably.
Keuchel's not great.
No, he's not.
And he's only topping out at 88, at least as of today or yesterday.
First of all, put Hancock in the PCL and see how many home runs he gives up per start. Second of all, does Emerson Hancock have a Cy Young Award from 7 years ago? I didn't think so.
True.
I think actually Keuchel wouldn't be my first call, though. I would go with Diaz before I would go with Keuchel right now. I'd go with both before I'd go with Keuchel right now. But is Keuchel better than Hancock? I don't know if he's much worse. They're both number 5 starters. I think Hancock might have a slightly higher ceiling, but so what's the ceiling? 6 innings and 3 runs instead of 5 1/3 and 3 runs. I think Keuchel will do a better job of battling. I think he'll do a better job of triage on days where he doesn't have it, finding a way to get through the game and at least giving your offense a realistic shot to win this game. I think Keuchel would have done a better job of that today than Hancock did. So
I think the fact that it even gives us pause, that we even have to think about it, is pretty damning of how Hancock looks right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, we're talking about replacing him with Jonathan Diaz. Yeah.
So all of this said, though, do you think the Mariners are actually going to do this? Yeah, because the Mariners have never really been the type to do anything that looks reactionary.
Even if they should.
Right. I mean, hell, Tommy La Stella was on this roster for a whole month, basically because of that. Right. So, yeah, I think I'd be pretty surprised if Hancock didn't make his next start as scheduled. Maybe they skip his turn in the rotation, but they keep him on the roster. Maybe they do that, but I would be surprised
at the
if that's
very
the case.
least. You should piggyback him.
And at that point, I feel like that's just a waste of a roster spot.
It is. I mean, it's a waste of a roster spot right now. Like you're essentially saying you're okay punting this game every time you start Emerson Hancock. Because what happened today, this is not an outlier. This is a very real possibility of what could happen every time Hancock touches the ball. Is he always going to be this bad? No. But like, is this within the range of outcomes? Yeah, it is. Again, it's very mediocre stuff. And when you don't have pinpoint command with mediocre stuff or, pinpoint control, you're going to leave pitches. Think of how many 0-2 counts or 2-strike counts that Hancock got into today where damage was still done against him. It was a lot, and that's a problem.
I just feel like his ceiling right now in a start is basically what he gave you in the Guardians start, which is like what was that? 5 innings, 3 run ball.
5 1/3, 3 earned.
Yeah.
1 strikeout, 1 walk.
Which like if that's your ceiling, which like that's fine, right? Gave them a chance to win, they did win, right? But if that is your ceiling,
those guys are a dime a dozen.
That's not good enough. Right. But Diaz actually does have a plus offering, and he gives you a left-handed component, which you don't have right now in your rotation.
Yep.
So that would be my choice. The other idea that I have is Tyson Miller and Austin Voth kind of piggybacking one another and essentially doing a pseudo bullpen day with those two guys. But yeah. Hopefully no one else gets hurt. And hopefully Brian Wu gets back as soon as possible. That's kind of the moral of this whole conversation. All right. We're going to get into more of your questions in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by PrizePicks. Spring training is over and baseball season is in full swing. Don't miss your chance to add your favorite players from the diamond in your PrizePicks entries. Whether it's strikeouts, RBI, or first inning runs, take your pick more or less and add them to your PrizePicks entry today. You can also get in on the basketball playoff action and win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks as you and the world's best players take the game to a whole new level during the postseason later this month. Tonight, I'm taking Charlie Morton more than 6 strikeouts against the Mets. Download PrizePicks today and use the promo code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code LOCKEDONMLB, all lowercase, for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. You're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen. And just a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube and Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So we're answering your questions on today's episode, but we have a question for you guys. Colby, hit them with it.
Yeah, question of the day. What is the best Disney song ever? Animated, full-length movies, or Pixar only? No Star Wars, no Disney Channel.
Right.
Just Disney movies.
Mm-hmm. All right. Do you have an answer for that?
I want to hear yours first.
All right, so I teased this a little bit on our Patreon show, which again dropped last night. So I have kind of an unconventional pick, but it's
That's
from
the most conventional answer we've ever heard.
It's from my favorite Disney movie though, Lilo and Stitch, Hawaiian Roller Coaster Ride.
Wow, that's your favorite Disney song.
My favorite Disney song. I love that song. That song is great.
It's a good song. Obviously, as a kid of the 90s Disney music was just on another level. I think Go the Distance in Hercules, though, is probably
solid.
My favorite. You'll Be in My Heart in Tarzan is fantastic.
Yeah.
And then
shout out to Phil Collins, of course.
Yeah. Nailed it. Had no business going that hard, but he did.
That soundtrack is a banger.
Lion King too.
Yeah.
Lion King is just absolutely incredible. So the 90s really rocked it. Individual song, I will go with Go the Distance from Hercules. Soundtrack wise, though, it's a toss up, but I'm going to go Lion King for soundtrack.
Yeah.
Tarzan right there.
Yeah. Tarzan. Yeah. Phil Collins.
Phil Collins. Like, why,
Killed it.
dude? Why'd you have to go that hard?
It's like that. Have you seen that TikTok video of the guy that like he comes into the room and he's like, "Hey, like we need you to do the pause music song for this James Bond movie tie-in game. Like nothing, not a big deal." And then it just goes
it's extremely hard.
Yeah.
Classic,
the GoldenEye pause theme is crazy.
Mhm.
That goes insane.
Yeah.
All right, let's get back into these questions. Ryan wants to know, has Haniger changed up his approach to be more contact driven rather than selling out for power? This is also something that we talked about on our Patreon show tonight, or again, last night for you guys. We keep on saying it. I know you're tired of it, but we're just going to keep on saying it. So I told you this, that watching Haniger right now, to me, he looks a lot more like pre-2020 Haniger than post-2020 Haniger, which post-2020 Haniger is a guy that more so sold out for power, right? He hit 39 bombs.
2019 Haniger also sold out for power before he got hurt.
Sure. Like we were starting to see the evolution into that guy. But this version of Mitch Haniger, and I'm not saying that he is this guy again or whatever, but just when I watch him right now, he looks like that guy that we saw more in the early portion of his first tenure with Mariners, where he's not striking out a ton. He's not chasing a lot. He's using the opposite field. I'm really impressed with the approach that we've seen from Mitch Haniger. I don't know if it's going to be sustainable for him, but so far so good. He's looked awesome. He's had some of the best at-bats of the entire team so far here in the early going. What do you think about Mitch Haniger so far, and what have you seen out of him?
Yeah, so far it looks a lot closer to 2018 than it did 2021. What's it going to be at the end of the year? I would imagine it looks a lot more like 2021. At least rate wise, we don't know what the counting numbers are going to be because we don't know how many games he's going to play. But it does feel like Haniger does ultimately want to be a guy who gets to his pull side with power, and then can still handle the outside pitch, can still punish it, but he really wants to get to his pull side, and he's going to try and cheat on some fastballs. He'll look ugly on some sliders and stuff like that. Like, I still think 2021 Haniger is what we're going to get in a, ratio style, report card. But, 2018 Haniger is significantly better than 2021 Haniger. He's got like 38 doubles, 26 homers, had 4 triples, had a 360 on base. I think if Haniger wanted to be a 340, 350 on base guy, like if that's what he was trying to do, he could still do it over the course of an entire year. But he's very clearly, since that 2018 All-Star season, he's very clearly thought, I'm going to hit 30 home runs, and that's going to be at all costs. I will hit 30 home runs. And so I think that's ultimately what we'll end up seeing from Haniger, is that pull heavy, get the ball in the air. Strikeouts aren't a huge deal. I think that's what we're going to see, and that's still a productive player. But yeah, so far it has looked a lot more like use the whole field, hit a lot of doubles, run into a couple home runs every month, and take your walks, don't strike out, just be a good all-around professional hitter. That's what it's looked more like so far. But we'll see which version we get, and we'll see for how long we get whatever version Mitch Haniger is in 2024.
Next question here from Darren. Unrealistic to switch Rojas and Polanco's positions. His second base defense, I assume you're talking about Polanco, has been cringy. I have never heard anyone describe someone's defense or anything that they have done on a baseball field as cringy. But Colby, what do you think? Switching Rojas and Polanco defensively?
It's 10 games. No.
Right.
You're not pulling the plug on just about anything. And anything that you thought was going to be a part of your plan, season-long plan on March 1st, you're probably not drastically changing that on April 7th or 8th. Like, no, Polanco, but I think Polanco's defense has been overstated, like how bad it's been, and he's just a porous, he's a sieve, and it's like, no, I think he's been fine. Like, he's not great. Nobody said he was going to be great. Is he such a disaster that he's going to hurt this team if you don't move him to third base immediately? No, I think he'll be fine.
I guess really it comes down to, do you think that, maybe third base defense going from Rojas to Polanco is kind of a wash, but Rojas would give you more at second base because he was pretty good there last year, of course.
My question is it more important to have a good third baseman or second baseman? What's the more valuable defensive position? I know it's easy to say second base, but you have a lot more guys pulling the ball than you ever have before. And we've seen how valuable having a great defensive third baseman is. We just saw it last year. Right. So,
but if your options aren't really like, you can't have a great third baseman, but you can have like a pretty good second baseman. Like, would you?
I don't know, because I don't know if Rojas is a good second baseman. He graded out great there when he came over from Seattle. He's one of the best second basemen in baseball. Okay, but he's played third base most of his career. So, like, is that just a small sample size thing? Is that, is that just what he is? He's just a great second baseman who's now playing out of position all of a sudden. Like, I don't know. I don't know if you actually get better by making that swap. My gut says you probably are, but I don't know if it's a for sure thing. And if Polanco is comfortable at second, more so than third, you also have to keep in mind Polanco, not the strongest arm in the world.
Yeah.
And, that is something that the Mariners are already dealing with at third base with Urias. So I don't think swapping Urias and Polanco really does all that much, because those are two guys whose arms you're both worried about. So my gut says that, like, if you're just building the best defense you can, and obviously Dylan Moore's not in the everyday lineup, so he doesn't factor in here. The best you could do on the infield is probably Polanco at third and Rojas at second, but I don't feel good like stating it definitively. So if it's close and Polanco is really comfortable at second and Rojas is really comfortable at third, because that's where they played most of their careers, then I think you might be doing more damage than good if you just swap them in early April.
All right, we're going to answer a couple more of your questions in just a moment, but first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by Gametime. All right, look, I'm king procrastinator. Colby can attest to this. My wife can attest to this. And the best example I can give you of this is I've had months to buy my tickets for the Mariners Blue Jays series. And it's like this was ever in doubt that I was going to go to this series, right? I get one chance every single year to go see the Mariners. I'm going to all 3 games. No question about it. Yet, I didn't buy my tickets until just the other day. I know. I suck. I'm the absolute worst. Thankfully, I was still able to get the seats I wanted at an affordable rate on Gametime. Gametime is now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets even faster and easier. Prices on the Gametime app actually go down the closer it gets to first pitch, and I get to see the view of every seat in the house, so I know exactly what I'm buying. Gametime's last minute deals give you up to 60% in savings buying last minute for sports, music, comedy, and more. And to avoid any surprises at checkout, you can turn on their all-in pricing to see the full cost, fees included. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. For a limited time, all users can get $20 off any MLB purchase of $150 or more in the Gametime app with promo code FIRSTPITCH. Terms apply. That's promo code FIRSTPITCH for $20 off from March 25th to April 14th only. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. Got a couple more questions to answer from you guys. This one comes from D. Panky. Is there anything the Blue Jays and Mariners don't have in common, including fans' anger at their manager, front office, and ownership? Which roster would you rather have this year and why? Yeah, if you take a quick look at Blue Jays Twitter, it looks very similar to Mariners Twitter right now. And that's, of course, because, the Blue Jays this offseason were in on Ohtani. They were pretty close to getting Ohtani, seemingly, at least according to reports.
Got used as leverage, something Seattle fans are very familiar with.
Right, yep. And, they were in on the Soto talks. They were apparently very interested in Yamamoto. And they, of course, didn't get any of those guys, and they ended up coming away from the offseason with Isaiah Connor-Falefa, Justin Turner, Yariel Rodriguez, etc. Not a particularly overwhelming offseason, not a particularly an offseason that a lot of fans are very excited about. So, yeah, fan reaction has been pretty negative, and they haven't gotten off to a great start this season, just like the Mariners. So, yeah, they're in pretty similar positions just in terms of like the temperature of the fan base right now. But which situation would I take? Obviously, I'm biased, but I think it's a no-brainer. I would take the Mariners right now. They have the best superstar between the two teams, Julio Rodriguez.
Mm-hmm.
The Blue Jays have really good pitching, but the Mariners have arguably the best rotation in all of baseball. It's also younger, more controllable than the Blue Jays rotation right now. The Mariners, to me, just have a much better foundation to build from right now.
Yeah. Specifically for this year, I'm still taking the Mariners. I think their lineup is deeper. It's better. I think their rotation is better. I think when healthy, the Mariners bullpen is better. I think their field staff is better than Toronto. I think their front office is better than Toronto's. Toronto's front office has kind of painted them into this corner where they're coming up on an inflection point. Either they have to kind of commit to Bo and Vlad, or they have to let a lot of their support players go and kind of try and rebuild that group. The Mariners have really no such issues coming up. So yeah, long term, I'm definitely taking the Mariners. Even this year, I would rather have the Mariners roster than Toronto's roster. They're not significantly better offensively. They're not significantly better in the rotation. They're not significantly better in the bullpen, but I do think that the Mariners are better than the Blue Jays in all of those spots. Now, in a best of 5 series, who knows, right? In the best of 5 series, the Diamondbacks are better than the Dodgers. Over the course of 162 games, we know that's not true.
Right.
So just looking at the rosters and who would I rather have from April 1st to October 1st, I'd rather have the Mariners roster this year.
Yeah. I think a more interesting discussion here, though, is the long-term outlook for both teams, because they've also both been on very similar trajectories and on very similar timelines with one another. And right. I think the Mariners are better positioned for long-term success. And I know that's going to get the comment section going crazy, but it's true. So, yeah. All right. Next question here from Gregory. Will this team need to sell off a major prospect to fill a need this year? And is the most logical prospect to dangle Harry Ford?
No.
No,
they don't need to dangle a major prospect to improve this team. If they did, then yeah, Harry Ford is probably the one that they would most like to move. Not that they would like to trade him, but just like if you're talking about like the top 5, the kind of the consensus top 5, who do I think the Mariners would be most likely to include in a trade package? Yeah, it's probably Harry Ford at this stage. But I don't think they actually have to add move anybody in their top 5 to greatly improve this team in the middle of the year. Now, if you're talking about, a star, right? Then yeah, Harry Ford would be the one that they would like to move, but you're probably going to have to trade them Young or Emerson. But like you can go get a pretty good reliever. You can go get like a number 4 starter. You can go get, the number 6 hitter in a good lineup. You can go get those guys without touching your top 6 or 7 prospects. So no, I don't think they have to trade like one of their top 5 or 6 to greatly improve this team. If you told me they were absolutely going to trade one of them this summer, I would guess Harry Ford. But I think Ford also probably gets you the least in return of, say Emerson, Young, whatever your other 2 are, Laz, Parmello, like whatever the rest of your top 5 looks like. I think I think Ford probably gets them the least. Just because there's still quite a few questions about the bat.
Less than Laz?
I think Laz, like his ceiling is so much higher offensively that there will be teams that look at that and be like, yeah, I'd rather have that guy, and he's probably only a year behind Ford at most. So I think, obviously beauty in the eye of the beholder, and different teams are at different parts of their rebuild or their build or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
So there might be a team who values Ford's, proximity to the big leagues more than they value Laz's upside. But I think most teams would rather take the chance on Laz's bat because it looks like it could be special. Whereas Ford looks like probably hit for a pretty good average, draw a lot of walks, and then we'll see how much power he gets.
Mhm.
And if he stays at catcher, fine. Like that's a really good catcher.
Yep.
If he can't, that's kind of like that's like a 110 WRC plus led by a lot of walks.
Sure. Sure. All right. That is going to do it for our show. But before we get out of here, once again, a reminder that Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. And now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Ty Dane Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Ty Dane Gonzalez and Colby at CPAT11, that's CPAT11. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you next time. Peace.